because if we want to understand the economic growth rate in any country, we know that there are three drivers of growth. And the first driver is export. The second driver is investment. The third driver is consumption. And we know that for export, after the 2008 global crisis, the high-income countries in the US, in Eurozone, in Japan, have not fully recovered yet. And under this kind of situation, the export to the high-income country decelerated. And that was one main reason for the deceleration in the export-oriented economies in the world. And the second one, investment. We know that every country in the world adopted certain kind of fiscal stimulus to support investment in 2008 when the economies were hit by the crisis. And those projects, after 4, 5, 6 years, are either completed or close to complete. So under the kind of situation, unless you have further investment, otherwise, the investment growth rate will also decelerate. That was the second reason. And the third one is consumption. Luckily, the consumption in China is still very strong. Like in 2013, the growth rate of consumption was 9%. And in 2014, I expect the growth rate of consumption will be at least 8%, among the highest in the whole world. And that was the reason why China was able to maintain about 7% growth rate. Then let's look into the future. Is China going to decelerate and causing the collapse of the economy as many doomsday shares predict? Or China will maintain its growth rate between 7 and 8% growth? Well, certainly it depends. First, it depends on whether the high-income countries are going to recover strongly or not. And the second one certainly is domestic, source of demand, whether they can continue to boost. And for the external situation, although we have some speculation about the strong recovery in the US, certainly I hope it will be stabilized, it will continue to grow dynamically. But I think there's still some uncertainty there, because we know that unemployment rate in the real term in the US is still very high. And in the Eurozone and in Japan, they continue to face the slowdown of the economy. So I think that the external demand is not reliable for China and other developing countries. And so fundamentally, if we want to make a judgment about the growth potential in China, most important thing is domestic sources. For the domestic demand, there are two sources. One is investment, and the other one is consumption. In the past few years, many people said China needs to switch its investment-led growth to consumption-led growth. And they attribute to the investment-led growth as the main reason for the slowdown in the Chinese economy. For that, I would like to disagree. Certainly, consumption is very important. It's our goal of economic development. However, if we want to have a consumption growth, we need to have income growth. And how to get the income growth? We need to improve the labor productivities. And the only way for improving labor productivities, one is technological innovation, the other one is industrial upgrading, the third one is to improve infrastructure in order to reduce transaction costs. And all these rely on investment. Without investment, you cannot increase labor productivities. Without improved labor productivities, you want to increase consumption, and then it will be an open invitation war crisis in China for a few years to come in the future. If you look into those countries which face economic or financial crisis, overconsumption is always the reason. So I think that China needs to start, need to continue to use its investment in growth. If we have good investment in the right area, improve labor productivities, income will increase. When income increase, then consumption will increase. And that is the reason why, although many people criticize the investment that grows in China, but if you look into the reality, consumption in China has been always very robust in the past 36 years. only average is about 8% per year of consumption growth. Can you find that kind of situation in the whole world? And even in the last 2 or 3 years, the consumption growth rate in China was about 8%, 9%. So I think that investment growth was still the key for maintaining the stability of the growth in China. Certainly, if you want to use investment as a driver for growth and to make this kind of growth sustainable, you need to have good investment opportunity, which give you high economic return and social return. And luckily, China still have plenty of opportunity for those kind of good investment opportunity. Because as a middle-income country, China can always to have industrial upgrading. Even we have many excess capacity in certain existing sectors, we still have scope for the industrial upgrading. Secondly, infrastructure investment. China is a middle-income country. We still can have a good scope for further improvement in infrastructure, especially in the inner city infrastructure, like subways and so on. And the third one, environmental protection. The fourth one, urbanization. Currently, the urbanization rate in China is only about 53%. And for a high-income country, in general, the urbanization is close to 80%. So that's a huge scope for further urbanization. And all these kind of areas will be good investment in terms of economic return and social return. And this is one area I'd like to point out. This is one area a developing country differs from a high-income country. A high-income country, when they have a slowdown in the economy, it's very hard to find good investment opportunities. But as a middle-income country, we still have plenty room for further investment to improve the level of activities. But if you have good investment opportunity, you also need to have good resources, right? And for that, China is also in a very good position. Because government debt, accumulated debt, as a percentage of GDP, is less than 50%, among the lowest in the whole world. So the government in China can adopt some kind of expansionary fiscal policy to stimulate investment. Not only the government is in good position, saving rate in China is close to 50% of GDP, among the highest in the whole world. So that means the government can use its fiscal expansion to leverage private sector investment. If you want to make investment, certainly you need to import raw material, equipment, and technology. You need to have foreign reserves. China has $4 trillion of foreign reserves. So China is not limited by the investment resources, as long as we want to make investment. And I'd like to mention this is something China differs from other developing countries. Other developing countries should also have good investment opportunities, but they may be constrained by the government fiscal position, or law saving, or limit foreign reserve. China are not limited by that. So with this kind of understanding, I am confident China will be able to maintain between 7% to 7.5% growth rate. And it's not only in the coming 1 or 2 years. I think there's an opportunity for China to maintain this kind of robust growth rate continuously for another 10 or 15 years. The main reason is that China is a developing country, and we know that for developing country, for developed country, if you want to have a sustained growth for a long period of time, you need to have a continuous stream in technological innovation and also in industrial upgrading. That is the only way to have a sustained long-term growth. In high-income countries, we know, like in the US, in Europe, in Japan, their industry, their technology are on the global frontiers. So if they want to have technological innovation, industrial upgrading, they need to invent those kind of technology or industries. But China is still a middle-income country. There's something called advantage of backwardness. In the technological innovation and the industrial upgrading, China can still benefit from the existing technology and industry in the world as a source of its technological innovation and industrial upgrading. And that was the reason why China was able to maintain 9.8% growth rate continuously for 35 years. And by that measure, In 2008, that is the newest data I can have, China's per capita income, per capita GDP, was 21% of the US per capita GDP. And it was similar to Japan in 1951, Singapore in 1967, Taiwan, China in 1975, Korea in 1977. And all these 4 East Asian economies, based on the same level and a gap with the US, they maintain 20 years of 7.6% to 9.2% for 20 years. If they can realize this kind of growth rate on the same mechanism for 20 years between 7.6 to 9.2%, I think that China has a potential growth rate of 8% per year for 20 years starting from 2008. You realize China's per capita income by the time of 2030 will be 50% of the US per capita income measured by purchasing power parity. Population size in China is 4 times of the US. So measured by purchasing power parity, the economic size in China can be twice as large as the US. But how come that with such a remarkable economic performance that China had those kind of problems? I think it's related to the way China engaged its transition from a planned economy to a market economy. As you know, that China did not adopt the Washington Consensus structural RP, try to remove all the distortions simultaneously when China started the transition from a planned economy to a market economy. China adopted a pragmatic, gradual, dual-track approach. On the one hand, continue to provide certain kind of protection and subsidies to all the priority heavy industry capital-intensive sectors. On the other hand, liberalize the entry to the new sectors which are consistent with China's comparative advantages. This approach allows China to maintain stability and achieve dynamic economic growth during its transition from a planned economy to a market economy and avoid the collapse as we observe in former Soviet Union, Eastern European countries. But this approach, China also pay some cost because the need to protect those kind of old sectors rely on all kinds of distortion in the factor pricing in the market. And those kind of distortions create the income disparity because the sectors which receive the subsidies are generally large-scale, capital-intensive firms either owned by the state or not by quite a number of private owners. And then they receive subsidies, they are riches. Who subsidize them? People put their money into the system and then result services from, let's say, financial sector and so on. And then, of course, income disparity. But it also created rent, because subsidies means it's a rent. And you're going to have rent seeking. Rent seeking is an economic term. It's another term people understand is bribing and corruption. And because of these distortions, the resources need to be allocated by the government. And so you need to get a good relationship with the government in order to get access to those kind of preferential treatment. And so the Chinese economy was relation-based instead of rule-based. And now why pollution is such a big issue? Well, it related to the stage of development. Because China is still on the manufacturing stage of development. We know that in an agrarian economy, in general, environment is very good. Then you move to the manufacturing stage, the energy intensity and emission intensity are both much higher, so you are more polluted. But when you move to the service-oriented economy, then the energy and the emission will be reduced, and you can have a good environment. And so all the country, starting from agrarian to high income, they entering into a stage of very polluted, a state, just like in New York and in continental Europe or in Japan, in Korea, and so on. They all enter into that stage. And China now are still in that stage. So that's one reason why China is so polluted. But it also related to the regulation. environmental regulation, and also technology. So with the understanding of the problems and the potential, what are the policy of the Chinese government? And as you know, in the third planner in 2013, the government the government promised to deepening the reform to remove all the remaining distortions. And in the fourth planner last year, the government, promote this kind of rule by law, and so rule of law. So those programs, the main purpose were to remove the remaining distortion in the Chinese economy in order to tap into the potential of the growth in China. And so implication what? I think that China is in the right track to eliminating the remaining distortion in order to have a well-functioning market economy so China can tap into the growth potential. And with this kind of government policy, I think the business operation will have a level playing field between the national enterprises and the foreign enterprises, between the large enterprises and the medium-sized, small-sized enterprises. And also, in the past, certain group of the firms in China, including foreign firms and large corporations in China, receive supranational treatment, or some firms receive subnational treatment. And I think those days will be gone. Because China is going to move to new merit-based instead of relation. In the past, if you want to have good business in China, you should hire certain people with good relation with the government. In the future, if you want to have a good business in China, you need to hire people who are competent. And China will also have to continue to upgrade its industries in order to further increase income. And China will move to technologically intensive industries. And China will also rely on green industries in order to cope with the environmental issue. And China will move closer to the global technological frontiers. So China will have to rely more and more on indigenous R&D. And to make that possible, China will have a much better protection of IPR. And secondly, as Yaoyang also mentioned, last year China already become the next exporters of capital. And I think this kind of trade will continue, that China will become the major source of the capital in the world. And there's several reasons for that. The first one is certainly China is a resources, a scarce economy. China needs to get more resources. China will make investment in those areas. And China has a competitive advantages in infrastructure. And we know that many developing countries and even high-income countries, their infrastructure is bottleneck for their growth. And China will use its competitive advantage and funding to support infrastructure investment in the developing country or even in the high-income country. And also China will, continue to use merge and acquisition to get access to higher technology from advanced countries. And China also certainly will try to enter into the domestic market of the developing country and even high-income country by set up operation in those areas. And the last one, and it has a very important implication, that China will start to relocate its labor-intensive processing industries to other low-income countries, like Japan did in the 1960s, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore did in the 1980s. And China was starting to do that because of rising wages in China. But here I'd like to mention the scale of the relocation is so much different. In 1960, Japan manufacturing sectors employed altogether 9.7 million workers. In 1980s, Korea employed about 2.3 million, Taiwan about 1.5 million, Hong Kong about 1 million, Singapore about 500,000. Now this time, in the labor-intensive industries alone, China employs 85 million. So China, the relocation will allow almost all the developing countries in the world to start an industrialization age and to achieve similar dynamic economic growth as China in the past 30 years, if they capture those kind of opportunities. And the third one, the last implication, with rising of the income, China will continue to consume more and more luxurious good, high-end goods. And currently, China already, contribute to about a quarter of the global market in car. And this will continue to be so, and it will become biggest. And currently, China already consumes about 1/3 of the luxurious goods in the world. And with the rising middle-income country, certainly China will become even a bigger market for that. So with this, I hope that you share my excitement about China.